just going to be a star in the NBA. There's no question and no doubt about that he's going to come into the league and just kind of make stuff happen. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So, today, we do have another college basketball video related topic. And today we're talking about Paolo Banchero, coming out of Duke. I believe that's how you say his name. I think I heard it said a little differently, by one of his teammates or something like that. But at least for this video, that's how I'm gonna say it. I'm sure I will have another video on this guy as we get closer to draft time, as he's a pretty spectacular player. But to start things off, he's a guy that, is projected to have potential to be the #1 overall pick. He's, a freshman at Duke and is probably their best player for Coach K's final run. So he's got, a lot going for him, right? Now, a guy that is fighting for that #1 overall pick spot with a guy like Chet, who I made a video on just yesterday, so you guys can go check that out on my thoughts for him. But Banchero he brings something different, right? He brings like a larger Jason Tatum type of feel. Jason Tatum kind of got moved to the power forward position and that's a lot due to their roster construction, I think. But I think when we all think of Jason Tatum, we think small forward still, even though he plays a lot at the power forward position and everything like that. But Banchero is really what Jason Tatum needs to be at the power forward position, right? Or wants to be, type thing. And I'm not saying Banchero is going to come into the league and immediately be better than Jason Tatum, but I think he has the potential to be. And he's just a super, super interesting player to watch. I just think he's got that it factor to his game when you see him, get the ball and just kind of make his move, you know what I mean, to get his shot up. He seems super fluid with it, super confident in it, and so far has led Duke to a 6-0 record. He's averaging 17.8 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists, while shooting almost 55% from the field, 31% from 3, and acquiring 1.5 steals and 0.7 blocks per game. And now that's only in 6 games played so far, obviously, so college basketball season is yet to continue. But looks pretty impressive. Now, Duke hasn't played anybody major yet, and that is coming up here tomorrow when they do play Gonzaga, which I think is going to be a pretty phenomenal game. You're going to have, like I said in yesterday's video, that underlying story of Holmgren versus Banchero for the #1 overall pick to stay undefeated on the season so far, and it's going to be a super fun game to watch. I don't typically watch a ton of college basketball, but that will be a game I'm tuning into. And I'm just super interested to see kind of both of their mentalities, just kind of going into the game knowing that that's going to be set around them and trying to fight for that #1 overall pick spot. I could definitely see if this game, goes down to the wire, super close or whatever, or if this game, goes one way and then we see them again, potentially match up later in the year or obviously next year in March Madness. I could see this as, a rivalry that bubbles into the NBA, right? Because I think when you look at rivalries in the NBA, we don't see them quite as often anymore, especially with big name players. I think the biggest one you think of is Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, right? Guys that were linked together their entire careers, especially being the Celtics versus the Lakers. They had all that going, right? But part of that started in college, right? And when we look at like a Kay Cunningham and a Jalen Green, we want there to be a rivalry there. And, Jalen Green said his stuff about Detroit, but it's more Detroit versus Jalen Green than it's Cade versus Green, right? Whereas if we really see something come together here in college with Banchero versus Holmgren, and then we see them go on to the NBA and kind of still have that happen in their past and then have close battles there or whatever, or one of them gets picked #1 and the other one wanted to get picked #1, there's potential for a rivalry for a long time between these two, and that's what makes this even more interesting. Now, Banchero, he's got some teams that he can definitely go to. I think my #1 team for him which is a team that definitely has the possibility. You know, all these teams, I'm not going to list off like the Lakers or something to get Banchero, because that's just not realistic. That's not going to happen. But like I said in yesterday's video, there's a lot of times where a team that's in that 5 or 6 range of getting that, you know, best odds of getting the number 1 overall pick ends up getting the number 1 overall pick. You know, we saw it with like the Pelicans for Zion Williamson, and you know, the Cavs have done it a few times and stuff like that. But it's not guaranteed that the worst records in the NBA are going to get it. And although it helps, as long as you're down there, you have a very, very good shot of getting the first overall pick. So my number 1 team would be the Orlando Magic, the worst team in the Eastern Conference right now, by quite a bit. Now, they're kind of hovering there with Detroit on, you know, just wins and stuff like that. But they definitely, I think he fits super well there, because yes, you have Jonathan Isaac, and yes, you have Chuma Okeke, but if you can bring in Banchero, I think he's better than both of them right away. And plus, Isaac is more of a defensive guy, so I think those two would work super well together anyways. But yeah, the Magic are 4-15 right now, worst record in the Eastern Conference. Not the worst record in the NBA. That would go to the Houston Rockets, which we'll talk about here in a second. But the Orlando Magic, you would get that like interior scoring punch. Then you can kind of have Mo Bamba or Wendell Carter be your center and be more of that, obviously defensive guy, but you know, maybe be able to stretch the floor, whatever it is, as that secondary interior big man. Obviously, you have a lot of guards that you have some promise from. Jalen Suggs will have another year under his belt. Cole Anthony started off the year super well. RJ Hampton, I believe, has a lot of potential. Marco Fultz, once he comes back, he started to kind of get things together after a slow start to his career. So you'll have a lot of potential, and I think the biggest thing is wing or that forward position. Now, Wagner, who they drafted in this last draft, has looked pretty decent for them at that small forward position. So you can really start to round out your team here, and I think Banchero definitely has potential to be a best player on a championship caliber team. I think that's, you know, a big reason why he could potentially go number 1 overall. And I guess, you know, as we're talking about the Magic, I think he's gonna go number 1 overall. Now, coming out of high school, Holmgren had the lead, I think. And for years prior, it was like Holmgren, and then Banchero started to really make his name, like the last year or so, to like kind of fight for that number 1 overall spot. But when I watched what Banchero, just when he, like I said, when he gets the ball, he just seems so confident in doing it, and just scoring and all his abilities and stuff like that. And you know, obviously he's playing under one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time in his last run, who obviously wants to make something happen here, and go out with a bang, hopefully. And sky's the limit for the kid. I think personally, I would take him number 1 overall, especially with the lower reliance on bigs. Now, I think Holmgren's going to be a beast when he goes to the NBA as well. But personally, Banchero would be my number 1 overall pick. And if he doesn't go to the Magic, my number 2 team for him would be the OKC Thunder. Now, a little bit weird that it's kind of the OKC Thunder, just due to a couple things, right? They've got good guard play and stuff like that, but they have Pokusevski and they have Darius Bazley, both power forwards as well. But personally, I think, you know, both of them have been, well, Bazley's been a pretty decent guy, and then Pokusevski's been kind of not very great to start his career. Now, I'm not saying they don't both have potential and anything like that, but I think if you compare Banchero with the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you start to look at something really special there, as you kind of have your inside guy, you kind of have your outside guy, and Banchero can step it out and hit the 3, like I said, you know, shooting not terrible from the 3, at what I say, like about 31% from 3, so, you know, he's able to make them and stuff like that, and just, I mean, that would be a super good 1-2 punch, especially having Dort on the wing. You get another year under Giddey, then really the center position becomes a area of target. Now you have the money to go after something in free agency, whether they do that or not, I'm not entirely sure, but I would love to see him go to OKC, and kind of just be that next guy for them. I think he, you know, it's what OKC's looking for, is that next guy, and I think Banchero definitely could be that guy for them, as just he's got a lot of potential for him. So OKC would be my number 2 team for him to go to. My number 3 team would be the Houston Rockets. Obviously, like I said, they have the worst record in the NBA right now at a whopping 2-16. pretty phenomenal play coming out of Houston there. No, but yeah, in all seriousness, you could play him next to Christian Wood if you slide Christian Wood over to the 5. That would create a very good inside-outside front court right there with those two, and then being able to kind of slide around what you're doing at the 3 with like a Jayshawn Tate or Daniel House or whatever it is, would still work. You still have Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. out in your guard positions, and then even if you end up having to move on from Christian Wood, if he starts asking for more money or whatever, as kind of time progresses, and you only have 2 more years on his contract. You have Şengün, who's shown some promise and could maybe move to that center position next to a Banchero. It'd be a little bit small of a lineup, but as long as you have some defenders on the team or whatever, especially off the bench and stuff like that, and you have a defensive culture and stuff like that, and if Şengün and Banchero can both play good defense for them, it shouldn't be too much of a worry with being a bit of a smaller front court. But yeah, I think he would work super well next to Jalen Green. I think that would be a super interesting dynamic duo type combo. Again, I think the same thing could kind of happen with Shea, right? That 2 guard that just fits super well next to his power forward that could really make something happen. And I'd be really interested to see how that would go. My 4th spot, though, would be the San Antonio Spurs. And I know, again, like I said last video, which you can go watch again, like I said. But the San Antonio Spurs aren't the worst team in the league, but they're 4-13 and they compete in a lot of games, and you don't know how much longer you're gonna have Pop, so you want to make sure you bring in a good prospect that can learn a lot from Pop and hopefully take the reins as your team's next guy, right? And Banchero, I think, could learn a ton from Tim Duncan, could learn a ton from Greg Popovich, and is already going to learn a ton from Coach K. So he would go from one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time in college to one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time in the NBA. And I just think he would work super well with this roster, right? It allows you to be able to play Keldon Johnson at 3, since he is only 6'5", and isn't the biggest power forward if you're going to play him at power forward. So it allows you to play him at the 3, kind of figure out what you're doing at the 2 guard position, as you've got a number of guys in Derek White, Lonnie Walker, Devin Vassell, and Josh Primo. And then you also have DeJounte Murray at your 1. Again, that leaves this team as another team that would be searching for a center or whatever, unless they're going to keep sticking with Jakob Poeltl. But I think he could fit very well next to this team, and that defensive identity with him being your main offensive guy would be super interesting to see. And I think the biggest thing here is I just wonder how good he could be with being such a talented player and getting the coaching of 2 of the greatest coaches of all time for the sport, right? But finally, for my 5th team, I would say it's the Kings. A lot of guards have been drafted recently. Now Harrison Barnes is kind of filling that 4 role right now. I think Banchero instantly would step in and be better than him, but you could slide Barnes over to 3 if you needed. He can play that well. I think at this point he's more of a 4, but him at the 3 wouldn't be a bad thing. And with them not really leaning into the Marvin Bagley thing, and Marvin Bagley just not being a good fit for them and just needing a new situation and everything like that, getting him out of there at some point, hopefully pretty soon, at least for his sake, should kind of help out the locker room, and leaves a void there, especially a youth void there at power forward, because you've got, like I said, Harrison Barnes, Mo Harkless, Chimezie Metu, Robert Woodard. Like, none of these guys, a couple of them are kind of young. The other 2 are older veterans. Like, none of them are your long-term options there at that power forward position. So if you're able to bring in Banchero, I think he could play super well off of the shooting that you have on this team, be your main front court guy, and he'd have a pretty decent center next to him in Richaun Holmes. So that wouldn't be too much of a worry or anything like that he's going to be playing next to a bad center. But especially if they do keep De'Aaron Fox and everything like that, I think that De'Aaron Fox and him would make a super, super interesting duo, because De'Aaron Fox has that speed, and then Banchero obviously is able to do things as well. And so I think that would just create a really interesting combination there, especially with some of the shooting that these guys have. And then kind of the defensive culture that's starting to maybe seep throughout this team, especially if you move around a little bit more personnel and bring in, and if Alvin Gentry stays as your long-term head coach, Obviously, we know that he was able to bring out some defensive stuff in New Orleans and stuff like that with like Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis and stuff like that. Now, two very good defenders at that. But I think he would definitely lean into that defensive culture that they could have. And although Buddy Hield doesn't really fit that, I think De'Aaron Fox is definitely fast enough and athletic enough and everything like that he can be a very, when you get some of the more right pieces, he can be a very good defender. Obviously, we know what Davion Mitchell is, very, very good defender already in his young NBA career. Tyrese Halliburton, a very good defender as well. Mo Harkless, a pretty good defender. And then even a guy like Harrison Barnes is a very serviceable defender. So a defensive culture shift could really happen there. And you could really have that 1-2 punch with Banchero and De'Aaron Fox, which, again, I think pairing him with a super good guard or whatever is the best course of action to really go in this. I mean, every team that I listed so far has that guard play that is going to complement him well, whether it be whoever ends up being the number one guard out in Orlando, whether it be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in OKC, whether it be Jalen Green or Kevin Porter Jr. for the Rockets, whether it be DeJounte Murray or one of the plethora of guards that they have in San Antonio, or whether it be De'Aaron Fox or even one of the plethora of other guards that they have there in Sacramento. I think, all these teams aren't very good teams, could use his services, and I would love to see how he would fit on these teams. Obviously, I think the Pelicans aren't really in this, as they've got Zion and Brandon Ingram, so where Banchero would play, it just wouldn't really work. The Pistons, although it'd be interesting to see him and Cade, I just don't see, unless you're trading Jeremy Grant and running Sadiq Bey exclusively at the 3, which could work. The likelihood of it happening just probably isn't all there. I think at that point they would probably go with Chet Holmgren. And then other than that, like the Raptors, he's not a great fit on. They already kind of have that power forward position, needing to be traded at some point. More than likely Siakam is headed out of there sooner than later. The Pacers have front court issues already. The Timberwolves, it could work, but I think they're actually going to be a play-in team this year. So, they're kind of starting to get things together. And yeah, that's all your bottom teams really. Maybe the Hawks get in there, but they already have John Collins. So it's really these 5 teams that would be in the race for this, and that would make the most sense for this. And I'm just super interested to see how he's going to translate to the NBA level. And just how he's going to do for the rest of the season at Duke. I think, again, I've said this numerous times in this video, but I think he's got a lot of potential, and he's just going to be a star in the NBA. There's no question and no doubt about that he's going to come into the league and just kind of make stuff happen. So, yeah, that's kind of be it from me about Banchero. If you guys want to go check out what I said about Chet Holmgren, make sure you guys go check that video out from yesterday as well. I will make sure to link it down below in the description. But, yeah, I'm super excited to see the game tomorrow and see how that one-on-one matchup plays out. And with that said, it's been your boy Dom from NBA Now, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out, guys.